And there's Bruce joining us, our illustrious president. And Wing 7 Commander Ken's on there. Great.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
Just another day in paradise, baby.
Well, that's good to hear. That's
Good.
good to hear.
Peter, when we're over tonight, would you please give me a call at home?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Hi, Peter. It's Nick.
hi, Nick. How you doing, Nick? So all the ice out of Lake George now, Nick?
Yeah. Matter of fact, the water temperature, I heard them announce it today, is 61, which is,
Wow.
that's kind of ahead for this time of the year.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, such a warm winter. Did
Yeah.
it ever freeze over?
Yeah, it did. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, good. So we've been doing these calls pretty religiously once a month for 5+ years. And this is the first time that I don't have any questions in advance. So we'll kind of open it up to the group to see if folks have some questions that would like to. Now that certainly means that everyone's Healey is running incredibly well. That they haven't had any challenges. Now, Dave Walsh, who's on there, he had sent me a note earlier that he had some problems with his car, but Dave, I believe you solved it. It was the inline fuel filter you replaced.
Yeah, Peter. Yeah, but the thing is the question is anyone else had that issue? Because it's virtually like there's something invisible in that filter or that strainer. I can't figure it out. The thing is, it's happened before. There's like literally 2 or 3 specks of dirt in it, and it clogs the thing up. And then I clean it, and it's fine.
So Dave, the other folks didn't get a chance to get the background. So why don't you just explain what the issue you were experiencing, and that others can address that, Dave. That'd be the best way to do that.
Right. Yeah, I just put your. I mean, it's kind of a head scratcher. That's all. It's just essentially driving down the highway, and I'm getting a low power, classic, fuel problems. And I noticed that the fuel pump, like it was at the parking lot, getting ready to leave, and the fuel pump wasn't clicking. Anyway, I took off, no problem. And I get in the highway, low power. I limped it home, and I pulled I suspected the filter, even though I could see that it was fairly clear. But I pulled out the inlet, put it into a Coke can, and ran. I think the fuel pump clicked away, no problem. So I pulled the fuel filter apart, and cleaned it with some carb cleaner. And problem went away. But it's just obviously something invisible that I can't see or whatever.
So that mesh that you got inside that clear glass container, and I've got some of those on my cars as well.
Yeah.
You couldn't see anything. It was microscopic.
Just literally like 3 specks, like a speck of pepper. That was it.
Okay.
That was all that was in there. But the thing is, the exact same thing happened about a year ago. It's funny. It just, I mean, I've been getting fuel at that place, and in my other car, I get fuel at the same gas station, and I haven't had any problems. But I don't know. There's got to be something there that I'm not. There's something to do with the strainer or something to do with the fuel. I don't know. But I don't know if anyone's had that problem, that issue before.
Anyone else have experiences that with fuel filters using those glass ones with the strainer inside that you can clean and put back in, not the plastic ones? No one else had any other? Yeah, I've replaced mine. When you get that, you buy the package, I think there's 3 or 4 of those strainers in there, and I replace them periodically, but not very often.
I don't know. Very odd problem. Maybe it literally takes very little to clog it up enough to, I get low power. I was able to run it. It wasn't like it was completely plugged, but it was pretty close to being completely plugged. And then no issue since. I've been driving it, probably 20 or 30 miles since then, and have no issues whatsoever. It runs like weird.
Well,
Dave, you think you have some sediment in your fuel tank that's getting into?
Well, I would think it would show up in the filter, and that's certainly a possibility, but I don't see it. Unless it's something that I can't see. Perhaps it's something I'm not. Some kind of like clear plastic or something in the fuel, some kind of varnish or something, perhaps. It's the only thing I can think of.
Do you know, Dave, is that fuel tank, is that an original tank or one that's always been in the car since you've owned it, or?
I think it's original.
Yeah.
I don't know what work has been done. I only got the car like 2.5 years ago.
I remember that, yeah.
So, but I haven't had too many issues with it. Now, the strainer on the fuel pump, and I believe there is one there. I haven't had any issues with that.
So are you running just an SU fuel pump? Or are you running
Yeah,
a facet or something like that?
electric fuel pump. The one that was on there, it was the original.
Okay,
And it was, I mean, it was, they, like, if there was a problem with the seal, we just dumped the fuel onto the ground. But at any rate, it was looking so old, I didn't trust it. So I replaced it. I just put a new one in there, and I still got the old one just as a backup, I guess.
but it is an SU fuel pump, right? It's the original style.
I believe so, yeah. I'd have to look in my logbook to see exactly what I bought, but I got it from Moss, and it was almost exactly like the old one, the original.
God, I realized I didn't have my video on. I apologize for that, guys. Well, that's good. Anyone else have any thoughts for Dave regarding issues with those strainers for fuel?
The only thing that I would say is I wouldn't recommend using those glass filters. They can possibly break and spill gas all over your hot engine. I prefer to use and I know about engine fires. I would prefer to use the plastic kind.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, maybe I'll do that, because you're right, that's one thing I did start doing. I'm carrying a fire extinguisher in the car from now on. It's a good safety thing,
So the fire
David?
you had, Rick, was that because and that was on your Nasty Boy, right?
Right.
And was that because of a fuel line, or do you know what caused it?
Yeah, that was because of operator error. I had my car started to run poorly at low speeds. And I thought perhaps I should check the Holly has two fuel filters that are built into the carburetor. And I decided to check one of the fuel filters and loosen it up and reinstalled it, I thought, tightly enough. While I was doing that, I noticed that one of the vacuum ports, there's a little rubber cap that comes on it. And it had come off, so I put that back on and I tightened everything up, and I went down the road to get some gasoline and said, boy, this thing is running great now. And apparently I didn't tighten the fuel filter enough, and the gas leaked out of it.
Wow.
Don't tell Haggerty.
Wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did have a fire extinguisher on the tunnel, and the louvers that are on the hood made it a little bit easier for me to get in there and shoot into the louvers while the thing was on fire. So it kept the car from burning to the ground. There was significant damage to I'm doing I have to replace the whole wiring harness, a bunch of other stuff that needs to replace. It got in down through the tunnel, burned up the carpet, and some of the other stuff. So it's a long, slow road to replacing it.
Wow.
Pete,
Yes.
maybe I can share something on that.
Sure, Norm.
Yeah, my brother-in-law, has built cars that raced the, Pan Americana race.
Yep.
And he had an electric fuel pump in it, and that car caught fire. And it also had a gigantic switch on the outside of the car that said, in case of fire, press the switch and it shuts the power off. What happened is he had an automatic fire suppression system on the car. So the guy never pressed the button. So what happened was it put the fire out. The pump would still pump more gas. The fire would start up again.
Oh, geez.
It just went on and on and on until the car burnt up. So, it's a good, with the electric fuel pumps we've got in these cars, it's a good idea, remember too, to shut the ignition off, especially if you get a fire,
And
Yeah.
Peter,
Fortunately, I had a mechanical pump on the Ford, And so it stopped pumping, but I had left the car in gear and turned off the ignition. And somehow the fire got to the wiring to the starter and shorted it out, and the car started moving forward while
Oh, no.
because it's activated by the starter. The good news though was that there were a couple people from Bob Abbott's shop that drove by and reported to Bob immediately that my car was on fire. So I appreciate that. I think Bob called me back 10 minutes later. So was your car on fire?
Well, it is a hot car, isn't it?
It's a very hot car. And the kind of cool thing is some guy in a Ferrari stopped. It was right on Route 1. He stopped in front of the McDonald's and took out his fire extinguisher and helped extinguish the blaze. So
Wow.
yeah.
Jeez. Well,
I have another suggestion.
please, Ken.
If he goes to buy one of those plastic filters, do not buy the ones that are like on a cardboard display hanging up in the back. Spend the extra 30 or 40 cents and get a Wix inline fuel filter. And I would also suggest all of my antique cars, I change the filters every year.
Do you?
Okay, noted.
And you also not recommend the glass ones either, Ken?
Absolutely not. Do not use them.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, point well taken.
Did you say Woods? Did you say Woods? WOODS?
Wix, W-I-X, Eldon.
VIX, yeah.
I'm sorry, say again?
W-I-X.
Wix, okay.
Yep. Bob Yule, you had a point?
Yeah, we've had experience with those glass filters as well, and on 2 different cars we had them shatter. No exciting fires or anything, but after that experience, we just don't use them anymore.
Right. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm glad I asked. I'll get a
Yeah.
Wix filter.
Yep.
I get a universal filter from Napa, and the car came with it, and I've changed it every year, and it's probably the same as the Wix, but works very well. Nice capacity to it too.
What's the brand, Ted? Do you know? Napa?
Napa Auto Stores.
I know. Is their store brand?
Yeah, it's your store brand. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
But Napa's filters are made by Wix.
Yeah, I was wondering. Yeah.
Okay.
Why do you change them every year? What's the issue? They deteriorate?
Well, it's very easy to do, and to me, it's just cheap security.
Okay.
Just to give you the other extreme, I haven't touched mine in 20 years.
Hopefully tomorrow's not your big day, Judd.
They cursed myself, but
Yeah, no kidding, huh? Are there other questions this evening?
Hey, Carl? It's Rick.
Yeah,
I was gonna
he's
suggest that
he's come
maybe
off mute. Okay, you're off mute, Carl.
I was gonna, maybe you describe the problem you've been having with your radiator, what you've found so far, and see if anybody has some thoughts.
Sure. So I've, got a BJ7. I was having problem with overflow. Not really overheating, but overflow. We talked about this a bit.
Yeah.
And I brought it to, a shop that's been doing radiators for 50 years, Natick Radiator, and they flushed it just, from the radiator cap, did it like a double flush, and I drove it. And then they filled it with 50/50, Prestone antifreeze, and it was good, for, 2 or 3 rides. And then I started getting foaming again. What the whole thing was, I was getting a lot of foaming. Now they checked everything, like all of the temperatures. I was getting great flow and stuff like that, good compression. So they thought that it potentially could be contaminated coolant. I don't know when the last time the coolant was changed. So we're sort of working along that thing. But I had some overflow over the weekend, at Bristol, and then we went on a tour down in Hull. So I'm trying now. I was talking to the radiator guy, and I'm going to try now. I'm flushing it again just with distilled water, and I'm going to go back with this distilled water with the water wetter down just above the coil to see what that does. But it's funny, when I was test driving it with just water, during the flushing operation, I wasn't getting any overflow at all. So that's kind of a question, but pretty significant foaming, and you would think, but it didn't, like the Natick Radiator did the test with the, to make sure I wasn't getting CO2 or anything like that. And he tested it probably 6 times and was no evidence of that.
So this is all, the radiator's been in the car this whole time, Carl.
Yes.
The Natick radiator, you didn't pull the radiator and have
I did not.
it. They
No,
did
no,
it
no.
while it was in the car.
Correct.
Yep.
So this has sort of been since you bought the car last year.
It has been, Rich. Yes.
So did you have it when you went back from Bristol the other day, on Saturday, Carl?
I did. Yeah, I got another incident that we had too, but I did. When I pull in, I get some overflow. It's not tremendous. It's just, it's not something that, if I could avoid it, it would be great. Again, I'm going to try this other flush again. And I spoke to Natick Radiator today, and he told me to come by, and he wants to do another, test for any contaminants or for the CO2.
Anyone have any recommendations for Carl regarding this foaming he's experiencing with his BJ7?
I don't know about the foaming, but as far as the overflow, when you fill the radiator, do you fill it right up to the top of the neck, or do you leave it?
No, I've got it just above the core.
Okay, all right. Been there, done that. Okay, got it. Thank you.
It's got a 7-pound cap that's, a new cap. So it's something we're sorting out.
Is this actual foam, or is it just overflow coming out of the tube?
No, it's foam. It's foaming too.
I mean,
No, guys.
for foam, it either has to be getting air in the system somehow, or there has to be some kind of, as you said, some kind of contaminant that would make it soap up.
Yeah, that's their thought. So that's why we're doing it again. Now, he didn't do the full flush with, I guess there's a way that you flush it where it goes through the thermostat and everything like that. He was doing just a flush by just opening the, the petcocks.
Yeah.
And, he had me run it with water for like an hour drive, came back, flushed it again, had me ride for like another half hour, came back, and then he added the 50-50 Presto. So,
just plain water, as long as it's not tap water, is probably the best thing you can use as far as coolant itself.
Yep.
You need some water wetter in there, something else that will lubricate the water pump, but that'll keep the temperatures down. And obviously during the summertime around here, unless we get a, blizzard, you're not going to need it during the summertime, the Prestone during the summertime. It might be something to try for.
Well, that's what I'm working on right now. I went through a couple of flushes today. I'm going to do it again tomorrow, and then I got the water wetter in. He told me to get distilled water, which I have. So I'm going to give that a shot, straight water. Because they say when I tested with water, I didn't get anything at all. It was, so this contamination, again, there was still some when I drained it.
So is tomorrow babysitting day for your grandson, Carl?
Today and Thursday.
Okay, there you go. So you put Pat in charge, huh?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's good.
But then the second one, I have something every ride. So I left Bristol right before the rain. I pulled in probably 5 minutes up the road to put my top up. I was parked on a little bit of an incline, and my transmission locked up, like frozen. Couldn't get it out of gear at all. So I called Mike Crawford, and Mike came over. He was still at the show,
Yeah.
And he played with it. We had to actually push it. He pulled the gear shift right out. I had a big screwdriver in my toolkit, and he was working with that. And then, a couple of, he and me and his friend and I pushed the car, and he was able to get it into neutral and then to get the gears working again. So that was my mishap on the ride home from Bristol.
Wow.
I'll try something on you because I had something similar with my car. And it was right after I had the transmission and the overdrive had failed. And so I sent it off. And when I got it back, it would lock in, and I want to say reverse. I don't remember the gear actually. And I had to step on the accelerator and it made a terrible clang noise like it was coming apart. And we troubleshot it. And what we ultimately found was the people that had rebuilt it had used a gasket seal around the edges of it when they mated the pieces of it together, the casing together. And that stuff, and they had put too much on it. It had come loose, got inside the transmission and was floating around and would get stuck in some of the hydraulics in the transmission from time to time. And so we drained the transmission fluid out of it a couple of times, but the last time we did it, we drained the transmission fluid out of it, put linseed oil in it, drained it again and drained it into a strainer, and we found black pieces of the sealant that was floating around in the transmission. And once we got that stuff out of it, I haven't had a problem since.
Wow.
I don't know if you've had yours worked on recently, but that might be something to look at.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, the other part, when we did get it back in gear and when we drove up, to Dedham, I didn't have overdrive. So I had lost my overdrive, and I think it might have been when they pulled that gear shift out, it might have been the way that it was aligned or something, but I have my overdrive's back today.
Oh, wow. Good.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen.
No.
My guess is that could be the same thing, something floating around in there.
Yeah.
Because do you know, has that transmission been rebuilt, Carl? I know you recently bought the car.
I do not know, Peter.
Okay.
The advertisement and talking with the guy said it had been gone through, but I'm not sure what that means.
Right.
Yeah, I would try draining the transmission fluid through a strainer.
Yeah.
And see if you get any pieces of gunk.
Okay. Yeah, I do need transmission work. My first gear is shot. It does. I do know that I need work on that. Because I've had it lock up on me probably 3 or 4 times in the year that I've had the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, again, if you're welcome to bring it down to my shop, we can put it up on the 4-post lift and we can drain it. And
great.
So if you want to, just let me know. I'm only in Mansfield.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and on mine we had to drain it a couple of times, but that's what it was. And it sounds, what you're expressing sounds very similar to what I went through.
And then do you have any idea what oils in the transmission, Carl?
I do not.
Yeah.
It was changed out last fall by Steve McKay.
Okay.
And it's clean as a whistle. I'm going to check it again. Mike had recommended that I check it to make sure that it's still up to level and everything like that. Check it tomorrow.
Because they recommend using straight 30 weight, non-detergent.
30 weight. Okay.
Non-detergent. So the most basic of oil is traditionally what you'd put in your transmissions.
Right.
But it's good you got your overdrive back. I thought you weren't going to say that.
Yeah, it's odd, and I saw somewhere online, they said that if that bottom bushing at the bottom of the shift, if that's worn, that something with the switch that enables the overdrive, it doesn't think that it's in 3rd or 4th. It was, that's way over my head. But does that make any sense at all? That if it's not aligned properly, that the switch that's on the side of the overdrive thinks the car is in something other than 3rd or 4th and will not allow it to activate?
Anyone have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a switch on third gear and fourth gear that enables that logic for the overdrive to engage.
Right.
And that has to work in order for it to engage.
Right. So maybe when the shift was pulled, there was something with that bushing that it wasn't aligning, but now that I've been driving it a bit, because I drove it the next day, it's a pretty long ride. And, but anyway, it came back today, so we'll keep an eye on it.
Oh, back to your radiator issue, that foaming there, what does it foam look like? Is it clear or is it?
It's white. It's a
White.
white foam.
Like, you think it's an emulsion of oil?
He said not oil. I talked to him again today. He thinks it's contaminated coolant. That who knows what's been added over the years or whatever. That was his thought, that it could be contaminated coolant.
Okay. That's what made me think that maybe it was oil getting into your coolant, which is not good. But
Yeah.
okay.
No.
Yeah. No, it's, naturally the first reaction is a blown head gasket or a cracked block, but we're thinking that it's not that. We're hoping it's not that. We'll also have to go see Rich for another block.
Yeah, you don't want to go down that path.
No kidding. Thank you.
Hey guys, we had an issue with a similar classic car, but not a Healey. And what it was doing is on idle, you'd look in the top of the rad and there was nothing. It was nice and clear. They were just using water and water wetter. However, when they would accelerate, so they're going down the highway, and this thing, when they would slow down, foam was coming out of, it was foaming out. So they flushed and they flushed. What it turned out to be is that when the fan is turning, it's actually trying to pull itself forward in the car. And in fact, one of the bushings in the fan shaft of the actual pump had worn out, and it was sucking air in. Because in fact, the fan would move forward. So, for what's that worth, they just put new bushings in the water pump, made sure everything was right to spec.
Well,
Foam
thank you.
stopped immediately.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Bob Abbott or Bob Yule, you've had any experiences with any of your customer cars with that?
No, I have not, but it sounds like it makes sense to me, especially since when you just use water in it, you're not getting that foam. That the additive of the antifreeze is what's giving it enough thickness to foam rather than just getting a little bubble that dissipates through the water. So, it sounds like there is an area somewhere where it's sucking air in or letting contaminant from the combustion process get into it, which would indicate a head gasket or something. But maybe somebody put some odd antifreeze or something like that that's not flushing out yet, and that's what's actually foaming up, like your radiator shop is telling you. We're
Right.
suspecting.
Have you drained it and refilled it with fresh coolant?
I'm on that right now. I'm gonna flush it 3 times and then add the water wetter with the last flush. That's tomorrow's chore.
Tomorrow's experience, not a chore.
Yes, that's true.
Is there an easy way to check his water pump to make sure it's not what Dave suggested?
Well, Mike Crawford, when I told him, he had a, and I'm gonna say the wrong word, but cavitation, or he was looking at the water pump and he was talking about something like that because, when it, as I say, when you rev it, that's when you get the foam. So he mentioned something about that, and he was looking at the water pump and he said that little hole that's in the top of the water pump there, he said if you had a scope and you could look in there, you could see what's happening, but that's not something I have, but I don't ever heard of that.
That little hole is a telltale to see if you're leaking water, if your seal is bad. And you're
Okay.
not getting any water or anything out of there, Dave? Colorado?
I'm not.
Well, Well, I don't know. That's a mystery, but it seems to me you're drawing air somehow.
Yes.
It
That's
seems
what
to
Rich had said. This is not right.
Well, that's right. But
I think
somewhere,
Which is
whether or
wicked
not you can
smart.
pull on the fan a little bit and see if there's play in your water pump.
Okay. Yep.
it seems to me that if air can get in, air can get out. Have you tried a compression test on the on the radiator cap that, you know, give it a pump, see if it loses compression?
Yeah. Have not yet, but that's probably my next stop with the radiator guys.
yeah, it could be a dynamic problem. It only does it when you're running. I'd go through your water pump, maybe even just swap the thing out, whatever,
Mhm.
get a new. And who knows, you know, it might be the hose. It might be something on the hose, something on the suction side, you know, you're pulling air when you're revving the engine up.
Mhm.
But good luck.
Thank you.
Does the car run fine, Carl?
Yeah. It just, I'm getting used to it. Yes, it's running. It was running great this morning. Yep.
Well, good. Okay.
One thing that we have noticed lately is that the rad caps that are being supplied, the stated pressure on them is not very accurate at all. I bought a 7-pound cap from a Napa store somewhere in the US, and a couple of days later, my top tank on the radiator was bulged up, and we checked the cap, and it was reading a 35-pound, not 7.
Wow.
Since then, we've been checking caps, and very, very few of them are at the stated pressure. They're not that far out, but that was an extreme. But they are, you know, if a 7-pound cap, it'll be reading 12 or 14 or something like that.
Oh, that's crazy.
If you go to buy one of these pressure testers, spending a little bit of extra money, and the better ones will actually test the radiator cap too.
Well, Carl, you were gonna bring it to the radiator guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he should be able to check that,
Right.
I would think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'd have him take a look at the water pump. The more I think about that, that could be your problem.
Could be. That's
If
good.
that's worn, if that shaft is worn or the bushings are worn.
Mhm. Well, that would be great.
Well, so you just want to get to the bottom of it, so that way you can
Yes.
get a solution.
Yes.
Because right now you're just searching still.
Mhm.
Just grab the fan and give it a good forward and backward pull and push, and an up and down. And if you feel any activity, any movement there, you probably have a bushing problem, and that'd be where I'd begin to look if you felt any movement in there.
Great. Excellent.
There are people that rebuild water pumps, or people have done it themselves, but for the price of it, I think you can get a decent water pump out of England that will last and be pretty assured that it's going to hold pressure in it.
Excellent.
So the quality of the water pumps that are out there in the marketplace, pretty good, Bob?
Well, there's been a whole lot of trouble with county water pumps. That brand, and you'll get those from Moss, and a lot of the American suppliers are selling all county parts. Some parts you can't get unless they're made by county, but so they seem to have cleared up their problem, but there's still a lot of them out there on the shelves. So I try not to use a county water pump if I can help it.
And that's county, CONTY?
Yes.
County,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. They make a lot of engine parts similar to that. You make,
Bob,
yeah,
Bob, should you turn the engine off before you grab the fan blade?
it might have been a good idea, yeah. Don't grab it too hard.
One thing
Okay.
that one thing that I
Chad, that's why that red shield is painted red over the radiator.
What is
one
it with
thing
you guys
that,
and semantics?
water pumps. One thing
You
with
just
new water,
painted yours red, didn't you, Carl?
I did. It was black. I just painted it red.
Bob, you get a point?
yeah, with the fitting new water pumps, they should be run dry for about a half a minute before you put the coolant in.
Oh. And why is that, Bob?
Well, it seats the carbon brush,
Okay.
and
Interesting.
the new county pumps now come with that instruction in the box.
Okay. And are you using county pumps, and have you found them better than what Bob had experienced, Bob Abbott?
We use a lot of them, and we've had some trouble.
Okay.
AH Spares makes a premium pump, which is a lot better. I guess the more dollars you put into it, the better it is. But they always seem to be out of stock.
Oh. And what, Bob Abbott, what about Ian? Did she supply a better part?
If she
I'm
can
sorry?
get them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Healy Surgeons, Carl, down in Maryland. Enan Phillips. Now, she's still working 4 days a week, Bob Abbott? Not working Fridays?
Well, they've closed their shop,
Okay.
so they're not doing any kind of repair work at all. They moved all her
Right.
parts into the basement of their house.
Okay.
So you can get her on the phone whenever she feels like picking it up. I call her on a Saturday or whatever. So officially, her outgoing voicemail message says they don't work on Friday, but she'll still pick up
Okay.
because it's sitting right there at the house. So, it's easy for her.
Gotcha. Okay. Other questions tonight?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alden.
Sometime back, I can't remember whether it was, I think it was probably in April, we had a discussion about tube shocks for the rear end of the big Heelys.
Yep.
And I looked into it and I got a kit from AH Spares and had it installed. And I remember in the discussion, there were some who were saying it was an improvement. Some who were saying, well, not much difference. Some said, well, I don't know if I want to spend the money and so forth. Well, I did it. And I would say that up to 40, 50 miles an hour, there's a modest improvement when you go over the railroad tracks or other washboard stuff. But above 50, the improvement I think is significant. The car just seems to settle down and just drive smoothly and flat. It's a significant difference. The faster you go, the better it seems. So that's my experience. Now, my car is a little different. I bought it from an estate, the guy who had it, restored it, got sick after he restored it and then died. And his wife had it for 7 years in the garage. He had converted it to a rally car. In other words, when he restored it, he did a beautiful job. Everything was lovely. The paint and everything was gorgeous. He put a roll bar in it, which I took out, and he put stiffer springs in it. So my car sits up a little, which I don't mind at all. And it's a really great driving car. But I think that the standard lever shocks were probably overpowered by the stiffer springs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm getting such an improvement. So I can't verify that it would, on a standard suspension, that it would make a significant improvement. But I know on mine, it's a different car going down the road when you get up into the upper speeds.
And you've done the rear shocks, not the front shocks, just the
Well, the
rear?
front shocks are levers and they don't have a kit for it that I know of. Is there? Because the shocks are actually, the lever shocks are part of the upper control arm, as I understand it, as I look in there, that's what seems to be. Am I right about that?
Yes, you are, but the tube shock for the fronts, you leave the levers in there for your upper control arm. You take the valve out of the shock, so now it's just free up and down, and you put the tube shocks on.
Oh, where do you
You
get
add
the tube?
tube-
Where do you get the tube shocks? Are they Spax tube shocks?
Well, you said you got your rear ones from AH Spares, right?
Right, and they're Spax. That's the SPAX.
Yeah. I thought they made for fronts as well, but I got mine from Putski. from-
Putski out in San Diego?
Yeah,
What's the name?
Putski?
Putski.
Leo
No, UTE, UTE,
UTE. Last name?
Putski.
How do you spell that?
That I don't know. But if you Google it, you'll find. Now, because I know Udi was getting out of the business too. Does anyone knows, is he still in business in 2023 with, because he was mentioning that at Enclave last year?
He still has advertisement in the back of Healy Mark, and he always has.
Okay.
So that's
Thanks,
another
Ted.
place to look. It's called Putski's Farpas.
Is there a kit or is it something you can fabricate, or how does that work? How do you get
He
the
has a
shocks in
kit.
there?
He
He makes a kit and he makes a kit and he supplies all the parts, including the bolts and nuts and lock washers, etc. And he uses come on, what kind of shocks does he? does he have? Bilstein shocks, yes, thank you.
So look in the back of your mark, Alden.
But he fabricates all of
Okay.
the mountain hardware and there's no major drilling you have to do. It all bolts on.
And is that reported to make a significant difference?
Well, it depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, yeah.
I said back in April that I didn't think it made a tremendous difference to my car. But the other guy that I put them on said, oh yeah, I really like the
Yeah.
tube shocks over the old lever shocks.
Well, I have
I don't
very,
think my lever shocks were that bad,
Yeah.
but I had the tube shock, so I tried it and I
my
was neutral on it.
my front springs are stiff and I have an oversized row bar. And they probably would be an improvement. I suppose the lever shocks were designed for the standard springs. This is probably why.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have one of our founding members, Don Pay, put it on his BJ7 probably 10 years ago and absolutely loves them.
Yeah.
He
The
did all
shocks I have
four
on the-
corners.
The shocks I have in the rear are totally adjustable. There's a little lever on the
Wow.
wheel on the side, and you just click it on higher or lower, whatever you want. And it goes up to, I've forgotten now, something like 20 or something, and I have it set on 4, so you can push the rear end up and down. You know, it's stiff, but you can do it. If you crank it up, it's real solid. So it's a totally adjustable. It seemed like a nice situation. My only concern is that the shocks are not really long enough because the car sits up higher and they're probably, that much too short. So when, before the axle hits the frame, and the rear axle's over the frame, before it touches the frame, the shocks bottom out. And I don't know whether that's a problem or not. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It concerns me a little bit. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, is this a phase 2 BJ8?
It's a BJ8 and it's early. It's a late 2000. 1964. It's an early BJ8.
Oh, it's a phase 1.
Well, I don't really know. What's the dividing line?
Well, the first 1,400 BJAs were phase ones. So your suspension, do you have plastic lenses or do you have glass beehive lenses?
On,
Your backup lights, I mean, you know, your back, but your tail lights as well as your markers, are they glass or are they plastic?
plastic.
Okay, that's a phase two.
That's a phase two, yeah.
And your car sits up 2 inches higher in the rear.
Well, it
over-
sits up at least that much higher because it's, everything's stiffer about it.
Okay, you got a phase two BJA, it sounds like.
Yeah,
An early phase two.
okay.
Okay.
Great driving car, but I'm a little concerned that the shocks are a little short. So I'm gonna call specs and see what they say. But it drives beautifully.
Okay,
So-
well, thanks for the report on that, Alden. That's great. Other thoughts, questions tonight?
Yeah, Pete, this is Dave Berube. I got
Hi,
one.
Dave.
Hi.
Please.
As it turns out, my gas tank was leaking,
Yeah,
and I ended up taking it out and looking at it, and the square rubber seal had pretty much disintegrated almost. It wasn't very stiff or whatever. So anyhow, the tank ended up rubbing on the trunk floor and kind of rubbing a hole into one of the seams on the side of the tank.
gotcha. Okay, the seal you're saying that fits into the boot.
The square
Yep, gotcha.
That
Okay,
fits.
yep,
that fits underneath the tank
yep.
and into the base of the trunk. So I'm assuming because that kind of deteriorated, that the tank ended up shifting down and rubbing on the trunk
Well,
floor. Okay, so that's all well and good to me. It looks like bad design, so I'm all dependent on this rubber square to keep it from hitting the floor. My question is, has anybody had any suggestions on putting something in addition to the square rubber seal to prevent my
so did
situation?
you say there's a hole in the tank now, Dave?
Yeah, yep.
Have you thought about replacing the tank?
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah, I am. I can't, I don't think I can get it repaired. I guess I could try and
Okay.
hoop it in whatever, but no, I'm
No, I
going,
wouldn't do that. Now, are you
No,
are you thinking aluminum or steel?
I'm gonna go steel.
Okay.
So again, the question is about installation, putting anything additional into the trunk floor.
I don't have any experience with that. I went aluminum.
But what does that have to do with it rubbing against the trunk floor?
Well, it's lighter, and I just felt aluminum was a better solution than the steel, but that was just my decision. But I'm not aware of any other, it's a gasket that goes around there that, sits on the lip of the boot floor, and that the tank sits on top of it. And, it just sits there. But if it deteriorated, then it was rubbing through to the tank. Sounds like that must have happened over many, many years.
Well, yeah, probably since I had it restored, which was 18 years ago.
As I recall, it's a fairly thick gasket though. It's like,
Yeah, I think it is rich.
close to a quarter of an inch or something.
Well, it probably was when it first got started, but
You think you're gonna outlive your gasket?
I personally haven't heard one of those gaskets deteriorating like that on a car getting regular use that isn't, out in the elements or anything like that. Sounds like you were an unlucky one, Dave.
sounds that way.
So have you got your new tank yet?
No, I just ordered it today.
Okay, great.
I just picked this up. I was supposed to go to the Bristol Car Show, and I was kind of doing some prep work on Friday, and
Well,
drips of gas on my floor in the garage, and it was like, okay, got a problem.
that's not good.
Nope.
Yeah, no, so Bob Abbott or Bob Ewell, anything you've experienced in your shops regarding those gaskets for the tanks?
Oh, no, the gaskets themselves are usually intact when when you take an older car apart. But even then, as long as the tank is fastened in securely with the two straps tightened up, it's not going to move. So something else must be loose to allow the tank to rub enough to rub a hole in it.
That's a good point, Bob. So Dave, did you put the tank in 18 years ago, or a restoration shop do it?
The restoration shop.
Okay.
Straps felt tight when I took them out. Could they have been tighter? Maybe so. I don't know. Could have been the issue, maybe.
Dave, do you think that the tank was worn through or rusted through? Just from looking at it, could you see shiny metal that was worn through from the trunk floor, or was there rust deterioration?
And now that you mentioned that, Bob, I would say there was a little bit of the brownness and rust. It probably could have been rust. Yep.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. I think if it's strapped down and those bolts behind there or in the back are tight, it's not going to move enough to be able to wear out. But that gasket is sort of a high density foam, and it could hold water in there if you ever got, if you wash your car too much or squirted too much water up under there trying to keep the mud from accumulating or whatever reason. In 18 years, if there was water on that bottom of the tank all the time or moisture, I could see it rusting out. Or who knows what the tank was like in the 30 years it lived before the restoration, and whether they overlooked some rust that was already started. I would just think that use the gasket that you can buy. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick to take up the gap there, and it's just made to keep moisture from getting into in between the tank and the boot floor. So I don't know of an alternative to that.
But most gas tanks seem to rust from the inside, though, with the condensation that sits in the bottom of the tank.
Yeah. Well, Dave, hopefully you get another more than 18 years out of it, out of the new one.
Yeah, I think that'll suffice.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something very unusual that happened to you, Dave.
Yeah. When I yanked out that rubber seal, it was very flimsy and I'm going to say compressed. So maybe I just maybe it was just a bad seal when it went in. It's possible.
Yeah, sounds it. But because was it a new tank or not? Was it a used tank?
So this tank I bought the car in '78. The detail information that I got at that time said it had been replaced.
Okay.
That's all I got. So.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? So Rick Neville and Judd Perkins have a couple ideas of things they'd like to talk about now. So I'll turn the podium over to them. Gentlemen?
Yeah. Rick and I, and at the board level, we've been having a series of conversations, and really wanted to get everybody's inputs here and thoughts. I think as everybody knows, as each year goes past, the club is getting older, and the leadership of the club, with some exceptions, but has been somewhat constant. Positions have been moved around and so on and so forth, but there's been a core group that's provided leadership for the club. And we think it's time that we should start encouraging and bringing new people in to leadership positions in the club, and frankly are looking for volunteers is one of the things that we'd like to do. And then talk about, and I know these calls, and thanks to Peter and all the hard work he does, have been very, very successful. But in terms of the type of events that were happening, club activities and everything else, are there other things that you guys, the people on the call, would like to see us doing that we're not currently doing? And Rick, I'll throw it over to you, see what you have to add before we open it up. And this is intended to be really just a free-form conversation.
Okay, for those of you who know me well, I probably will be a little bit more blunt than Judd. We're in trouble. And I mean that not to be an alarmist. Bruce Ketchen, after serving nobly in the position of president, has determined that he's not going to continue in the job past January. And right now that will leave us without a president. The position for vice president has been open for several years. Steve Bell is going to be relocating to Florida, meaning we're going to lose our national delegate. And unless we get some people that are willing to step up and fill those positions, we're going to have trouble running the club. I mean, it's that simple. I use this story that I've read online about the, I think was called the American MGB Association. It was the largest MGB association in the United States with over 3,000 members and had been in existence since the 1970s. And their president passed away, and no one would step up to fill the position, and the club completely shut down. 3,000 members, which is about what we have in the Austin-Healey Club of America. So it's one of these things where you think, well, you know, it can't happen here, and the club's been going on, you know, for over 45 years now, pretty much running, you know, successfully. But unless we get some people to fill in for these jobs, and the people, as Judd said, there's been a core group that have been running the club as directors, as officers, and putting on summits and doing all the stuff that the club needs to do to function. Frankly, a lot of those people are burnt out. It's a job that takes some time, and you know, as we get older, we're not as spry and nimble as we want, and it can be tiring for people. And especially if you've been doing it for 40 years or 30 years or even 10 years. And so my pitch here is we definitely and deathly need volunteers to step into some of these leadership positions. And that goes hand in hand with that is, as Judd says, we're getting a little bit older. We're starting to see a lack of participation when people put on events. People are not attending them. And there can be nothing more frustrating and disappointing for someone to come out and plan an event and hope that, you know, 10 members of the club show up to do whatever the event is, and no one shows up. And it's, unless we get some improvement, with participation and people volunteering to be officers, directors, you know, it doesn't look good for the club. I don't think that's, I might be a little bit more alarmist than other people, but I don't think so. It's been a trend in the last probably 10 years, where we're, you know, this stuff where we do this online is great. You know, the Healey BS calls are great. We could continue going on as a virtual Zoom club. However, you know, the club is certainly much more than that, and can be more than that. So that's part of my pitch. So anything that you can do to either volunteer for a job, and, you know, it's not, you don't have to have a lot of experience, and there are a lot of people that would be willing to help guide you along with what to do. I know Bruce didn't have a lot of experience running the club, but he moved into it pretty quickly. And you know, that's something that there is that also goes along with planning events, attending events. There are a lot of people that are experienced that are happy to help, but we need people to step forward and help. So back to you, Judd.
Well, and I'll just throw it open for discussion and would love to hear people's thoughts on that. What can we be doing differently, better, whatever, and just get everybody's thoughts about the direction of the club. And as Rick says, anybody that would really love to step up and offer to help, that would be really appreciated. But I think we really want to hear from you guys rather than us sitting here pontificating. So I'm going to throw it open to the group and get everybody's thoughts.
Who are buying the Austin-Healeys today in the 20s to 40s group? Is that slacked off? I know in the antique world, you can't sell antiques to young people. Is this happening with the Healeys and other cars like them?
I think one of the things is that the cars are so expensive except for sprites. And you've got younger people that are, you know, trying to save for or pay for a house or trying to pay off student loans. There's that is part of it, the money issue. And the second part is these cars don't appeal to somebody in the 30s or 40s. They're looking for a Japanese car or, you know, 240Z or RX-7 or a Miata. You know, people like the cars they liked when they were young, and we're all not young anymore.
For somebody that's 65 years old today, an old car is a 1980 because that's the car of their youth. And I had a conversation with and I can't remember his first name, the Bug-Eye guy.
Dave Silverclay.
Yeah, and he was saying that what he's seeing is with younger people coming in, he says they just want to push buttons. He said that, you know, the concept of a choke on a car is something that they have trouble comprehending and dealing with, and they don't want to deal with it. You know, and he's doing a nice business with his electrified sprites, which is just push a button. So,
but those are 50 grand too. So it's not the guy who's saving money to buy his first house either.
Yeah.
So Ken Gibson's got his hand up. And you're on mute, Ken. There you go.
Yeah, I am muted. Well, you know, this is a pretty interesting conversation. And the reason I had asked you to call me is in that package of stuff that I got from that gentleman in Long Island that you turned me on to, there were two very interesting pieces of literature in there. And one of them is a letter to, I forget the gentleman's last name, Hank, but it's written by Bill Wood in September of 1974, talking about the advantages of having a club. And some of it is really pretty interesting, and I won't go into those details at this point. But the icing on the cake is then in November of 1975, I have a handwritten letter from Donald Healey to a Mr. Cross saying, good luck in the formation of your club. And some of the advantages of having a club here in the States, one of them is having a Healey day, you know, so it was just coincidental. So I totally agree. You know, I've been out of the club for a long time and just rejoined about 1.5 years ago. And well, I did step up to Wing 7. And
thank you.
Yeah, and to Rick's point, Peter, you put out, you know, a message for me, you know, because the 24th of June, you know, I've got I put a thing together and I've gotten one response, one. So you're right, Rick, it's disappointing.
So let me ask a question. So do you feel you're getting enough communication from us? Are you aware of the events going on? I mean, what we try to do is give you, when someone plans an event, give you a month, 2 months notice, and then like 2 weeks before, and then like Mevik, I know Ted Cryer's got an event this weekend, so today was the deadline for that. I don't see is Ted still on or not, but it's that sort of thing that you're going to put the time and effort into doing it. It's certainly important. I certainly know. Last year we did a couple tech sessions here at my shop for a new member, and working on a bug eye, and we had 12 guys here, both to remove the drivetrain and then put it back in 2 weeks later. So that seemed to show interest. But again, it was a dozen of. So if you look from a membership perspective, we are lucky in New England, in that we do have we're the largest club of the Austin-Healey Club of America. We have 350 members, and the number continues to stay around that level. Typically we lose 40 a year, and then we gain 40. So William Rosener, who's on right now, he's a new member. He's looking for for 100 right now. And so, Bill, anything you'd like to say, what you've experienced over the first couple months with the club, and things that you've seen or not seen, or things you'd like to see moving forward?
Far be it from me to be a critic. I don't, I'm in the process right now of selling the house I currently live in Newton, and buying a condominium unit in Lexington that has a 2-car garage, which I currently lack. And at that point, I think I'll be probably more likely to be in the market.
Did you see that email I sent you about that one on Bring a Trailer?
I did. There's a BN1.
Right.
I went years and years ago, 1959, I had a BN2, which I sold, to go to school.
Yep.
But I love that little car, and I look forward to the possibility of having another one.
Okay.
But Peter, Dave Walsh, that's an interesting conversation you're having there, regarding the survival of the club. Let's face it, we take you guys for granted, guys like yourself and that run the club, and it's all very easy. But when you guys want to retire and move on, I belong to another club. It's a metal detecting club. The exact same problem. The older guys are saying, "Hey, I've had enough. I'm going to move on, and we need volunteers, people to step up to the plate." I had a good conversation with Bruce Ketchum last time we met for the Cape Cod run, which he ran. He organized completely. I have no idea how you would go about doing something like that. He was talking about Steve Bell retiring, and he's out of the picture. I don't know why, but he's like, "Well, we used to do the breakfasts," and I was like, "Well, how do you do that?" You know what I mean? If you fellows, like Peter, yourself, or Bruce, or even Steve Bell, if he's willing to do it, would mentor somebody, and perhaps a volunteer or somebody that's willing to just step up, and get their foot in the water to take on those tasks and learn how to do something like, say, I want to run, a Cape Cod run, or I want to run something down in Connecticut or whatever. I think that's what we need, what we need to do, not just you guys, we all need to do it and step up to the plate to keep the club alive, because it's great. The advantages are tremendous.
Yeah, and that's something, Rick has mentioned that before also, Dave, and thanks for bringing that up. It's something that we're more than happy to do. And, that's something that, when I took over the presidency, 15 years ago, I had never had an elective office within the club. And I got a call from the past, preceding president. He said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Sure." And just kind of dove right into it. So it's, we all have our own style. So there's not one style. that, works for this. Is, each people bring their own approach to how to run these things. So just Steve Bell is moving to Florida. He sold his house and he's moving to Florida. So, so as Rick mentioned, we do need to have someone Steve's been the national delegate for 16 years. And so that's one of those roles that we're going to need to fill. And basically what that role does, it represents the 350 of us as the representative back to national. And that's the and Bob Ewell's been a delegate for many years as well for the Southern Ontario Club. So there are a lot of folks that have been involved with that. But I'll open up any other question, any other
Let me jump, Peter, let me jump in and say a couple of things. One to Dave's point. In terms of doing some of the events and so on and so forth, I think any of the wing coordinators have done them. I used to do them for a living. If anybody wants to put on an event, contact me and I'll give you how. It's really pretty simple. And a couple of years ago, we put together a list, wing by wing by wing, of going to TripAdvisor and other sources, attractions and points of interest in the various wings. And that list is out there. If anybody wants it, they can get it from Peter or myself or Rick. The other thing I'd be curious is on this call, who's coming to Summit? And if you're not coming, why not? Because then I'm not looking to point any fingers, but I'm just curious, is the stuff that we're doing at Summit the sort of things that you want to hear and see, or, and we're curious if you're not coming to Summit, how come?
Just some
Well,
feedback.
I'm not coming to Summit because I'm going to be at Southeast Classic the week before. And I don't relish the 18-hour drive from the Carolinas up to Connecticut and missing a day of Summit to boot.
Yeah.
So I would dearly have loved to come, but I'm just not able to do that. But one thing I should say, in our club in Southern Ontario, if you are elected to office, one of your jobs is to find your own replacement.
Right. Train them. But no, that's good to have feedback on everything, and it's important.
Dave Walsh, what would you think would be the best way to communicate the ability for people to, if they want to get mentored? How do you think to best communicate the situation that we're in, and the ability that if they want to step into a position that there are people that will mentor them? Do you think it's an email blast or by the?
You have to get people willing to do it. You maybe perhaps even a nomination. Hey, an open letter to the club and say we need to. We have this position open, and we, so and so is going to retire, doesn't want to do it anymore, and then these are the responsibilities. I mean, it's just like I was talking to Bruce Ketchum, and he said Steve Bell used to run these breakfast things. And I enjoyed it. I did it. We did a couple of them, and I really enjoyed it. And he said, well, he's retiring, so we're not doing it anymore. I said, well, how do you do that? You know what I mean? How do you run something like that? How do you contact everybody? I mean, I know that's probably a stupid question, but that's where I'm at. I don't know anything about running clubs or anything, but at any rate, an open letter, and get some train back from the whoever's there, the treasurer, the secretary, or whoever, to the person that's interested in doing it and willing to do it. Yeah, good question. Yeah, that would be perhaps was a better idea. I don't know.
Dave, one more thing, completely off the wall. Have you seen the British show, The Detectorists?
Yes. I
Great
love
show.
that. I love that show. That's actually kind of what got me interested in doing metal detecting. And, the guys that I met, they're in Wareham, Mass here. They're, the great guys, salted, like you guys, salt of the earth, great people. And I really enjoy doing it. And, but anyways, we have exact same problem. The president is 80 years old, and he's like, hey, I'm done, And I stepped up to the plate to be the secretary, but still, people are reluctant. And, you know, like they say, the young people today, they don't join clubs. They want to play video games and go on the internet. And it's kind of a, I don't know, it's a hard to recruit people. And I mean, that's the other thing I think we ought to make plain to people. You are a club member and you need to recruit people. You need to get your buddies and your friends interested in this sort of thing, whether it's Austin-Healey's or detecting, metal detecting.
I have a question. Is there anything written or a description in detail of what each of these roles entails? Like, you know, what does a delegate do? I mean, besides represent the club. I mean, how many hours? And what's really involved, and what's the commitment? Maybe same thing with president and vice president.
So Rich, so there is a delegate's handbook, you know, also as it relates to all of our, in terms of how we run the club, you know, those are all available. Everything's in the members only section on our website. And again, be happy to share that more forwardly. You know, again, we try to use the website as the source of all truth, so to speak. In that, I realize maybe sometimes people aren't aware of those sorts of things, but that's where, you know, we have all our bylaws of the club are in the members only section. So that's open to all of us, just like, you know, there's an annual treasurer's report, a report that we publish. You know, we are a nonprofit organization where we're registered in the state of Massachusetts as a 503c. And, you know, we file our annual reports with that. So we do have those formal processes in place, Rich.
The bylaws describe the duties of the president and the vice president and each of the officers. That's in the bylaws. And as Peter says, that's on the website. The one thing that's not, I don't think we've got the definition of anywhere, is the wing coordinator role. And, you know, what we tried to do with the wings was break the club down because of the geography of the club into 7 mini clubs. And then with the wing coordinator acting as the leader of that mini club. And they're very different based on the geography that the wings encompass. But that's essentially what that role is. And primarily it's one of trying to get the members together, putting together some events, seeing what people are looking for event-wise, and hopefully getting some other people to step up and volunteer to do it also.
You know, Rich, I think you make a good point is, you know, that while the duties are delineated in the bylaws, you know, it's very bylawsy. It's very legalistic junk. As a lawyer,
You're hearing that from an attorney.
Yeah. But it's, you know, no one's going to want to read that stuff. And maybe something that the board of directors needs to do is come out with, you know, some publicity about how the club is actually run. You know, maybe a lot of you don't know anything about how the directors do this stuff. We're all, you know, like the Wizard of Oz behind that big curtain, and somehow the club, you know, manages to flounder along. Maybe that's something that we should do is devote an issue of the hen to what the issues are that are facing the club, and what are some of the things that the members can do if they want to help, and what these jobs entail. And I think you make a good point, Rich, about, you know, how many hours am I going to devote here? Is it, you know, am I never going to see my Healy and my wife and my grandkids and my kids ever again if I take on one of these positions? And
so I just think it'd be helpful to have a sort of more of a description of what the job really is.
Yeah. No, there's what the job really is compared to what the legal description of what the job is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But yeah, that's Rich. That's something certainly can be done. That's not a problem.
Peter,
Yep.
We can't be the only member of the national club that's having this problem. Is there anything we can learn from other clubs that has had some success?
Bob Ewell, again, as a national delegate, certainly hears a lot of this, and, you know, Southern Ontario's one of the strongest clubs that's out there. But, you know, I think we're down to 39 clubs now. There have been 3 that have been are no longer operating now. But having said that, Steve Bell's going down to Florida, down to the west coast of that, south of Tampa, and starting a new club. So it'll be part of AHCA, but it will be a club down in that area. So, and he says he's got 40 people who are interested in that, because they don't want to go all the way up to, from Fort Myers up to Tampa to do that. So
That's where all the old people moved to, is Florida.
yeah.
And they took the Heelys with them.
The growth market.
Yeah.
But I think in the last 7 or 8 years, the national club has gotten smaller. And I know some of the other clubs have gotten smaller. I was talking to Roger Hamel a few days ago, and I think the Montreal club I think he said there's now 36 members. And Peter, my recollection is that club was bigger than that a few years ago, particularly when they did the conclave at Charlevoix. I thought it was 60 or so.
Yeah, I mean, probably what we experience is probably a lot of the clubs typically lose 10% of their membership annually.
Yeah.
There was a time back when this club had 5,000. So Rick, you said 3,000. I think we're now down to 2,500.
Yeah, nationally. Yeah.
Nationally, yes. Yep. So overall, I would say, the nationally, we probably lose 5 to 8% a year.
Yeah.
But we've been very fortunate in New England, because that's not the case. We've been in this 340, 350 range now for many years. Now, that doesn't mean we lose people, and then we bring new people, like Bill Rosner, who's looking for his BN2. So there's folks like that. So if you see in the Hen, we publish every month the number of new members we have. Carl J is a fairly new member, and thank you for participating in that. So, Bruce, anything else you want to say?
Well, I think some good points have come up tonight. I have conducted several tours myself, and I stepped into the position of president without a lot of background or experience in this particular club, but had been a member of other clubs in the past. And so I had some idea of what the job involved. I can tell you that with respect to events that I've been responsible for planning, I've had a very simple formula, and if it's something that I like to do, the assumption is that there are probably others that would enjoy the same sorts of things. And again, the idea that maybe the message isn't getting out. This isn't terribly complicated. If you know a road, and most people do, in the area that they live, that what I refer to as Heeley roads that are easy to drive and that have accommodations for restrooms and gas stations and the like. It's a very simple thing to set up a tour, and the jobs in the club, I think, is the easy way to summarize it would be to say, many hands make for light work, and perhaps we need to be doing a bit more outreach to the members to get more people involved, so that there's less strain on the people who are participating and involved in the management of the club. It's a great club. I don't think there's any fewer Heelys out there now than there were 10 years ago. In fact, I keep hearing of these cars coming out of barns, and people are restoring them. We have several club members now who have their cars being restored. And these cars, people are getting to the point where they don't want to drive them any longer, but they don't seem to have any problem selling them. And I suspect that we need to start tracking where these cars are going and doing outreach with things, and conversations like this are extremely helpful, because when we do reach out, we need to understand what people would like to get from a club. There are plenty of car events. We did in the last 2 weeks. My wife and I did two events: the Brits by the Sea and the Bristol event. They weren't
Healy centric, but they were British car events, and there was a very good representation at both of these events from the Healy community. So there's a lot of interest out there. I guess the question is, what exactly do people want, and what do they expect, and what would they like to get from the club? One of the things I know for certain is that people like to eat, and a very simple club gathering can be built around either a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner. The British Car Club in New Hampshire that I belong to has a dinner once a month, every month, and they have their club broken up into councils, much the way we do. And they get good turnouts. We get, even during COVID, there were 25 or 30 people showing up at a restaurant for gatherings of the British Cars of New Hampshire. So yeah, perhaps get some more feedback, what people like or what they don't like, what they want to participate in or don't want to participate in will be helpful. But I can tell you that doing an event is a fair amount of work, but it's enormously rewarding. And as I said, I only do events that I like, and invite people to come and join us on these events. And so far, they've been pretty successful.
And to add on a little bit, Peter's got the club roster and membership, and it's sorted by wing, and you can sort it by pretty much anything you want, type of car, last name, wife's first name, you name it. It's capable of being sorted on that basis. And if you want to do an event, Peter can do the mailings for you, and just just tell them, here's the 3 dates that I'd like the mailing to go out, and that becomes an automatic process. If you're struggling with putting together a flyer or something like that, because you're lacking a little bit in computer skills or graphic skills, again, Peter, myself, Sam, who does Hen now, can put those flyers together for you. So there's a mechanism in place to make it really as easy as we can make it for everybody.
So just curious that you brought up the Hen there, and thank you, Judd. So if you notice, in 2023, we do have a publisher, Samantha O'Donnell, who publishes our Hen. Any experiences what you're seeing in 2023 compared to what you experienced with the monthly newsletter in past years? Good, bad, or indifferent? Ken Glidden, you got something? Okay. Anyone have any thoughts regarding the newsletter?
Hey, Peter, to back up a little bit regarding the need for officers and board members, maybe it would be an idea to put in the newsletter a featured position rather than the list. We need 10 positions, including board members and officers and all that. Maybe say, well, we're looking for a vice president, and the qualifications or the job description is the following, rather than flooding the newsletter with all the positions at one time.
Thanks, Nick. That's a good point. Because again, that's what we did. So because we did no longer had an editor, so we made the decision to go with a publisher this year as it related to the newsletter, and that's why we hired Sam O'Donnell to do that on a monthly basis. One of the things we're being very cognizant of is make sure that we get that published by the 1st of every single month. That's the reason that we ask if you have new content you'd like to include there, to have it by the 15th of the month, so she can go and make sure to put that together. She's a graphic artist by education and trade, and it's something she's enjoy doing. But it's a different approach than we've had in the past. She's not an officer of the club, but she is the publisher of the Hen, and she gets paid for that. The rest of all of our positions are volunteer. Anyone else have any thoughts or recommendations?
I'm going to say good night.
Thanks, Bob. So I will just let you know, one of the things we're gonna be doing, you're gonna get an email out tonight. I'm not sure, Linda Hakala and Bob Britton right now are in Norway. There are 30 Healey's that went over to Norway for the European meet. So you'll get the email with a link to the Facebook page. So Linda is sending updates on a daily basis as it relates to what they're doing. Rick Neville manages and oversees our Facebook page, and he's also providing content. So it's very interesting seeing what's going on right now in Norway. And you got cars from Australia and all over Europe. And like I said, 30 cars have come from the US. One of our other members, Dave Siwa, out of Philadelphia, he and his wife Barb went over there with their BJ7 as well. So they went over in a container, and the cars arrived several weeks ago, and they all arrived in good shape and in good stead. And now they're touring around Norway in this European meet. So you'll be able to keep updates on that on a daily basis. So you'll be getting an email on that tonight. So our next call for this will be on July 10th. So if there's any other questions you have or recommendations, please let any of us know in terms of so Nick, you brought about open positions. So really the open positions we have are the president position and the vice president position and the national delegate.
And wing 1 and wing 2, I believe, Peter.
Yes.
Okay.
And wing 4 coming up, Peter.
You're absolutely correct. I was thinking more of the officer positions, not the wing coordinators. But thank you for adding in that with that. So, but I'm not planning on going anywhere as your webmasters, unless someone would like to take it over. But I enjoy doing it, and I'm not planning on going anywhere. So
Great, good.
And we don't believe that Linda Hakala as our membership and treasurer, or Beth Seelan as our secretary. So there's a lot of consistency of people that have been doing this. I've been involved with the club since we moved back from Europe in 2000. And so going on 23 years, and I started just as a regular member, like all of us. And then had the opportunity to get the presidency in 2010, and did it for 3 years and loved it. So I've continued involved since then.
Bev Seelan she's probably the longest one. I mean, she's been in that position since the 70s.
Well, again, so she's the national treasurer. She's only been our secretary for the past several years, because if you recall, what used to happen is the president's wife would get stuck with the secretary's role. So that was one thing that we broke that tradition. So you're absolutely right. Bev has been the national treasurer for as long as anyone knows. But for New England, she is the secretary.
She's quite a girl.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. So any other thoughts before we go?
So,
Hey,
thank
Jim,
you.
you got a question? Jim Constantine?
No, just want to say thank you for all
You're
the
welcome.
work. Yeah.
No, you're welcome. So, well, thank you all. Hope everyone have a great 4th of July, and we'll get a chance to see you on July 10th. So that's that Monday after the 4th week. So thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll give you an update on when this recording will be available. So good night, all.
Hey, Peter, thank you for thanks for hosting, Peter.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Peter.
Yep. Thanks, Ted.